Hello everyone and welcome back to part 2 of coding out the user models to actually fit the registration part of this project. What we need to do is start working with the HTML. So those templates, what we are going to do is come over here to templates part, create a new folder. We'll call it basic underscore app to match the name of our application. And then under this, I am going to create a new file and I will call it base.html. Okay, so it's going to be the base HTML that we will be inheriting from. I will create another new file and we will call this index.html. That will be the actual index page. Then we'll create one new file and this will be registration.html. So the registration page, and then we have not talked about it yet, but after someone's registered, they are going to want to log in and log out of this page. So we will create a new file called login HTML, and we would not work for that right now. So we'll have another discussion about logging and logging out. But right now we want to work on these three main files base.html, index.html and registration.html. And once we have done that, we'll also edit the urls.py file of the project and create a url.py file for a basic application. Well, let's start off with the base, which is going to have everything we need for the project. So the first thing on the base HTML page, I don't have that open. I have registration. Here we go based on HTML page. Let me collapse this so I get a little more room HTML and let all the automatic input and we will just call this base for the title. Actually, we would not give it anything because we don't want to inherit the title block there. You could make another block for a title block and then inherit everything kind of separately, the head and the body. That's totally a normal thing to do, but we would not focus on that until we actually get to the clone project because we would not care too much about looking good right now. What I am going to say is passing the bootstrap. I mentioned we don't care about looking good, but we want to look a little bit good. So we pass some bootstrap and then I am going to create a navbar on this page just so we can quickly jump to links on the pages. So this navbar it's going to be with the class equal to nav space nav bar dash default. Okay, space navbar dash static dash top. Then after that I'm going to make a div and that's going to be inside of our container class, and then after that that's it. Then after that I'm going to create a unordered list and that's going to contain all the links. So this unordered list is going to have a class of nav space nav var dash nav, and you can always copy and paste this from the online bootstrap tutorial. Okay, so inside this unordered list are going to be the actual links to the other pages on the site. So we will create three anchor tags and these anchor tags are going to have a class equal to either navbar dash brand or navbar dash link. So we'll say navbar dash brand and we will have this link back to the actual home page. So we'll use template tagging for this home. Remember from the template tagging lecture, so we can just type in URL and then index if we set up the view or the url.py file properly. Have not actually set the urls.py file, so we'll have to do that and make sure it matches these URL template calls. But I will have here be the actual text, say something like Django or home, whatever you want. And then we'll create another list, another anchor tag, and this is going to be of a class as well. We'll say class, and this anchor tag is equal to navbar dash link. And I am going to copy and paste this because we are going to see it again right below to link to another page on the site. So this will be the insight admin admin. Okay, and then this is the registration, registered on site. So for the actual registration, then what we will do here, say under href tag, we can give the url, create a url tag, and let me make sure I have the percent signs up here as well for the index page. There we go. Okay, and we'll say url template that looks for basic app, and then what it returns is whatever named the register view. And then here we are going to say the same thing. uh, we'll call you url, and then we will say admin and then pass an index. Okay, honest. So basically that we did is we set up a navbar in the base HTML, and it links back to the home page with Django, links back to the admin page, and then links to the registration page, which we have not actually created yet. But we will in just a second. Later on, when we talk about login, we will show how we can use template tagging to add a fourth link that will either say login or log out depending on what the user is doing. But after all of this, outside of this navbar, what I want to do is say simple tagging, create a block, uh, called this block, the body block, and then I will also say end block after this also. Okay, and anything inside of this, we'll just put them into a container. So for the other pages, everything that's going to be there will be inside a container. Obviously, that's optional, but for now, this should work for us for a base that .html. Now let's focus on the other files such as the home page. So the home page is just going to extend from that. So we'll say extends basic underscore app slash base.html. And I have noted a lot that you have to make sure the very first line in any HTML file is this doc type HTML. The reason I can just say extend here is because if I extend this property, uh, the very first line should be doc type HTML, and then the second line will be HTML, etc. Sometimes if you are a little confusing, you can always just copy paste this onto the first line to double check, though you have it twice type, but just make sure that it is the top of the base.html, and that the very first line is extends, and that should work fine as well. Okay, we want to actually call the body block that we made, so we'll say block and then body underscore block, and then we'll say div and jumbotron class. Inside the div, I tend to really like jumbotron, and we'll say Django level 5 as the home page. Okay, that is the last level of Django. And then what we are going to do is continue by calling the end block. So I will say end block right here, and the block, save that. Okay, that right end block here. Now let's move on to the registration page. In that case, what's going to happen here? We also are going to extend. from basic app slash base.html, and then I am going to set up the actual registration form that's on the page. So this is going to look a little bit different, but usually you are going to want to import some files. So maybe you want to import or load static files. We don't really have any, but just to show you what this would typically look like if you had static files, maybe you want to import some images like welcome to the page, like your brand image or whatever on your registration page. So typically you would need to load those static files in, and then we are going to call block, body block, and whenever you do that, you also want to call in an end block. And now let's actually put in the form. So say div, inside the div jumbotron class name, and what we are going to do is have some logic here, some if else condition or what any other thing, and going to look like this, and this will make more sense when we talk about the views and the context dictionaries. Okay, so then it will return, but it is going to say if registered, meaning the context dictionary returns something that says registered. And because I have an if, I want to make sure I have an and if also. So we'll say if registered, this person is going to say thank you, or this site is going to say thank you for registering an exclamation mark. And then because I have an if, I can have an elif also, and if also. Okay, so I will say else, so this person is not registered. Then we are going to actually display the HTML for registration, which is something like registered here. And then let parts in the actual file will say and fill out that form. And then we need to make the form using template tagging. So first we want to have the actual form. We don't need a class and we don't need an action. We can take care of that later. We do want to make sure is that the method is equal to post, and because we are using multimedia data that we are uploading such as the image file, we need to say C type is equal to, and we are going to say multi-part uh, from data. So make sure you have that, otherwise the image uploading would not work, so we can have that. And usually you want the method to be last, although that does not actually affect it just for readability. So having this is more common, and then we are going to do is call an CSRF token. Okay, and then call in the parts of the form. So remember that form we created, we can say user form underscore sp. That's the base user form is going to ask for. If you go back to the forms of that forms.py, so remember user form, we are asking for the username, the email ID, the password. Then we want to call the user profile info form for the portfolio site and their profile pic. So coming back to the registration, and then once you grab those attributes from the base user form, I'm going to also want to grab stuff from my profile form underscore p, and this term user underscore form and profile underscore form, those are going to be defined within the context dictionary of the views. So we have not actually done that yet, so we will type in an input. This going to be submit type, doesn't need to have a name, but it does want to have a value, so we'll say register, and that's the end of our form. So pretty simple so far. So we'll save this, and that what we have done so far in this lecture is set up three main HTML files. We set up our base HTML file which has the navbar, which has the links with the URLs on them, and then it also has the body blocks, the index page. This is just the home page, landing page. Not much here except for welcome to Django level 5 essential, and then registration, that HTML which has the tokens, user forms, and profile forms. So these are things from the views sending back the context dictionary that we have not actually worked with yet. Before we actually conclude this lecture, let's set up the urs.py file to match up. And then in the next lecture, we'll actually talk about more about the registration and what the views.py file is going to look like. So let's start by jumping to the actual project.urs.py file, which I have opened here. We'll scroll down and set up everything up. So what I want to do is say import URL, and I will also include import admin, and then I want to say from basic underscore app import views. Now we haven't worked at all of the views.py file. In fact, if we take a look at it, it's totally empty. But so far this is going to be a bunch of functions that we need to fill out later. So right now we will kind of assume the names of those functions and then work backwards to them. Let's set up the home page since that's pretty easy every time. So we'll set up URL, and then using regular expression, I just want to say just the domain name. We use index and we'll give it the name index. So let's set up a couple more views. We'll set up the admin page to be URL. That's actually already set up for us. Never mind, let's set up URL. Anything that has to do with basic app. So we'll say uh, here basic underscore app slash, and then I am just going to call include the basic underscore app startup URLs. Okay, and then we'll talk about logging in and logging out later on. But these three views should work for now, and if we come over to our basic app, it doesn't have a URLs file yet that will match up to include here. So let's create it. We'll say basic app, new file, urls.py. And now let's actually do the urls.py file for our application first. Going to say from django.conf.url import URL. Okay, import URL. And then we'll say from basic app import views. Again, you can just say from import views, it's up to you. And since we are using template tagging, or I should say template URLs, remember we need to set up the app name variable. So here say something like app name is equal to, and then it has to match the actual application name. In our case is basic app, and it will create some URL patterns, and the patterns we are going to create is one for someone who is about to register. So we will say URL patterns, the caret symbol, regular expression, but you need to use the path method here for latest Django application. Okay, but I am writing the regular expression terms for that registration views, but you need to use the path method. And for that you can take the help from ChatGPT. We have not made it yet, but we'll create it in a little bit and then we'll say register there. So we'll add more to this later on, but this should be a nice everything we did. We set up based on HTML, index HTML, and registration HTML, and those are linking to the actual context dictionary. So we are going to return back. We will work with .py file. Then we also set up the basics of URLs .py for both the project and the application. We are not done with them yet. We still add more step to them when we talk more about working with the login page. But now coming up next is the majority of the work and lot of happens is right here with the views.py file. So thank you for watching this.